On yesterday's cabinet meeting. Let's take you there now, live.
To the grieving family and the entire Tshwane University of Technology community following the death of Katlego Monareng. Cabinet calls for calm whilst police investigation is underway to ensure that whoever is responsible for the untimely death of Katlego faces the full might of the law. Cabinet conveys its deepest condolences to the family and friends of the 8 people who died in an explosion at the Dinel munitions factory in Somerset West in the Western Cape. Cabinet also conveys, as I've earlier alluded to, our sincere condolences on the fatal incident that happened in Gauteng yesterday, and we do also hope that working together with the provincial government, our own Department of Public Works will assist in shaping the way forward with regard to the state of bad buildings in South Africa. Congratulatory remarks. Cabinet congratulated the people of Zimbabwe for successfully transitioning into a new government led by President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who was inaugurated on the 26th of August 2018. His Excellency President Ramaphosa joined other African leaders in Harare to witness the occasion. Cabinet supports President Ramaphosa's commitment to work closely with Zimbabwe to enhance the historical, political and fraternal relations, with particular emphasis on strengthening economic cooperation. Cabinet commends the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and specifically its female researchers, on health research being undertaken to improve the country's healthcare system. This includes, amongst others, a diabetes detecting chip to monitor blood sugar levels by analyzing breath. Secondly, the development of probiotics for use in the production of broiler chickens, dusky cob and abalone, which will assist in the production of natural animal products free of antibiotics, chemicals and growth stimulants. And lastly, the research that is being done on the stem cell research. Cabinet also congratulates Dr. Evodia Setati, a senior researcher at the University of Stellenbosch, who won the Distinguished Women Scientists Award at the annual South African Women in Science Award held in Polokwane on the 23rd of August 2018. Cabinet also congratulates Caster Semenya on her impressive performance in winning a 3rd Diamond League final in the 800-meter event in Switzerland. The following are the appointments that Cabinet has approved, noting that all appointments are subject to the verification of qualifications and the relevant clearance. Mr. Jacob Mbele as the Deputy Director General, Energy Programs and Projects in the Department of Energy. Ms. Hilda Dikeledi Mhlongo as the Deputy Director General, Corporate Services in the Department of Energy. The non-executive directors of the Land and Agricultural Development Bank Board of Directors, Advocate Sandra Kutsie, who's been reappointed, as well as Ms. Matane Evelyn Makato. That is all that Cabinet had elaborated on. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We'll allow for a round of questions. Can we perhaps start in Cape Town? Lisa?
Yes, we'll take a round of 4 questions. We'll start with Linda.
Good morning, Minister. Linda Eamshaw from Business Day. You talk about a complete overhaul of the visa system. Could you elaborate, please, on what the thrust of that overhaul will be? Thanks so very much.
Maria? Just waiting for a workable mic. Okay, Maria.
Hi, good morning, Minister. It's Marianne Merton from Daily Maverick. Quick question with regards to the public service issue. Could you give us some stats and numbers? How many civil servants are currently facing disciplinary proceedings for violating the ban on doing business with the state? Could you also explain perhaps the following? On point 2.2, Cabinet has approved that the relevant executive authority of government departments should monitor. Cabinet members were meant to monitor this in terms of the Public Service and Administration Act for the past 20 odd years, and the regulations also stipulate that it is the relevant ministers that have a role to play, and those regulations have been in place also for over 20 years. So what is the purpose of Cabinet now deciding that individual ministers must monitor the implementation? Are you saying that ministers haven't done their jobs before? Also, what is happening to the 4% of senior management members who have failed to submit their financial disclosures? Are we looking at taking disciplinary proceedings? Thank you. Paul?
Good morning, Minister. Paul Beckjauter from Bloomberg. The slowdown in the economy has been quite urgent. Shouldn't governments sort of start releasing at least some details of the stimulus package as soon as possible, rather than waiting for an investment summit in order to start sort of increasing confidence in the economy? Thank you.
Janja?
Thank you, Minister Janja Nieuwbouw for Pretoria FM. Two questions. The first being actually linking to Paul's question. You know, the economy, economic figures are being released every now and then some sectors go up, some sectors go down. Government takes a lot of credit for whatever goes up and blames everything that goes down on the global situation, it seems. Because a year ago we were in the exact opposite opposition, where agriculture went up and mining went down. What does government do to actually influence this, or does government just watch? Is there a plan, or should we wait, as Paul has asked, for a plan to materialize, when really this should be the primary preoccupation of government? And secondly, on point 5 of the many points, National Protected Areas Expansion Strategy. Is the plan to expand industrialization or expand these national protected areas? I think it's unclear if government talks about development and it talks about national protected areas, which is in the ascendancy.
And just the last one, if may, would be, can we take Jan, and then Wendell will do in the next round.
I'm Minister Jan Langer from Report newspaper. Regarding land reform, the President has made several times, gave the assurance that no land grabs will be allowed. But there are groups in South Africa who are openly organizing land grabs, and they are grabbing land and making land inhabitable in large parts, for instance, in the northern part of Pretoria. What is government going to do about this? This is it's very serious. Groups are openly defying government in this case.
That's it. Pretoria, back to you.
Thank you very much, Liesl. Want to take those now?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll respond to these ones and then we'll come to Pretoria.
Thank you very much, Cape Town, for the questions. We all know that there were a number of inhibiting factors that have been identified around the visa regime of South Africa, the issues that are related to the children, the issues that are related to the skills required, but also the location and processing, and including the turnaround time. And all those issues are the ones that now the interministerial team is working on, and it has been identified as one of the immediate things that are within the control of government, and government can be in a position to resolve those. We also know that we have relationships with other countries where, with regard to South Africa, particularly on tourism, visas are not a requirement. We need to also look at those kind of matters that are of concern. And lastly, around those who are having scarce skills, as well as those who intend to come and invest in South Africa, you do need a much more clearer visa regime that would not necessarily put more of the stumbling blocks on those who are interested to come to South Africa. But our visa regime has to be an enabler. And I think that's what Cabinet has actually emphasized. It has to be an enabler whilst not compromising the security of the country as well as the security of the vulnerable groups. The the details around the public servants facing disciplinary action, I'm sure that detail would be found in the purview of the Department of Public Service and Administration, including the various departments that have got their own public servants that are affected by this. And what we are also quite cognizant of course, is that the regulations have been there all along. We know also that the database, there's now been a centralized database that has actually been located in National Treasury, and it is precisely because of that we have to make sure that there is communication also that flows from that database to the various departments when this information is being presented, so that then we do not have that gap that exists as it has now been identified, presented in the report that Cabinet considered. What is going to happen to the 4%? Of course, there are recommendations that have been put, amongst others, putting those to terms. Secondly, verifying whether they have indeed not presented the information, because there are areas where there is dispute around whether there's been declaration and so forth, and that is work that is ongoing, done by the Department of Public Service and Administration, but also in the responsibilities of every executive, as they also have a responsibility to monitor and ensure compliance in this regard. The stimulus package, I'm sure we have also heard this morning President Ramaphosa speaking again, raising this issue that we will be presenting it within a short period of time, and that would also be followed by information on our areas of investment, not only foreign direct investments, but also the promotion of domestic investment and the collaboration that has already started to unfold. It will be within a short period of time, precisely because we also had many other engagements. We've been to the Lekgotla. We've just had the first cabinet post the Lekgotla. We will also be going into other very important meetings of government that look at the costing of all these interventions that we'll be putting together. And at an appropriate time, the pronouncement will be made by the President on these particular issues. That is also linked to what you have raised, Yan, on what does government do when we have these challenges. We have raised the issues around the review of the basket of tax-exempted goodies, as the work that is being done through the National Treasury, the commission that has been set, and Minister Nhlanhla taking political leadership in that regard. The intervention just a day or so ago by Minister Jeff Radebe, consideration even on our various policies, including on protecting those areas that contribute towards growth. As we have asserted, the issues of food security, access to markets, diversification of our own agricultural, our farming activities, and most importantly, innovation and investing on research, so that we find alternatives, beneficiation, the completion of the mining charter, as some of the things that we are already working very hard on as government. On the protection of the areas, yes, there has to be a combination. We need to appreciate that, amongst other things, we have to protect our environment, but we must also turn that as an opportunity for economic development, as we have seen with the management of our different World Heritage sites and our wetlands. The intention is to not just be focusing on conservation, but it must also be about conservation for economic growth, whilst upholding the environmental status, so that then you don't degrade that actually can contribute to sustainable development.
There's the last question on the land grabs.
Yes, sorry, on the land grabs. Government will never allow and tolerate any form of land grab in our country. There are already laws in place, including bylaws that have to be effected, and we call upon landowners, local government, and law enforcement agencies to act in a manner that will really demonstrate that this is not in line with the implementation of the expropriation of land without compensation. That subject is a subject that is going through a process as championed by the parliamentary processes. Those that act in that way are actually breaking the law. What is also of importance is to make sure that we should not wait for a crisis where there are many people on site. We must be in a position to act immediately upon seeing people invading any portion of land, because this very kind of action does compromise the conditions and the intentions to do everything within the confines of the law. We have received several reports about what is happening around the country, and we have, together with the various spheres of government and the law enforcement agencies, made a plea that the property owners, those who are aware of what is happening, must communicate on time, but you must also know that you must never allow people to be on a piece of land for a particular stipulated period of time without acting, because then, with regard to other laws, you will then be expected to demonstrate that they have an alternative accommodation, as we have seen with the previous court judgments. We urge those that are behind these acts to also respect the rule of law in South Africa. And those that are known, they must be actually taken to task, but it is not government's policy.
Thank you very much, Minister. Can we now take a round from here in Pretoria? Unfortunately, I've got a challenge to see behind on my right. I think that's Barry, and then there's a hand here in front. And then I'll go across to Lorenzo there at the back. Can we do it in that order?
Good morning, Minister. Barry Bateman, Eyewitness News. Just on this issue of the land grab that you're talking about, and the message you've sent and the discussions you've had with the law enforcement authorities and the like. Just this recent one in Pretoria, and you also said that you urged people to act swiftly before people settle there for a while. What had happened was, and ironically, it was a black man who owned this particular piece of land, and even when he presented his ownership papers to the invaders, they actually offered him a piece of it, a 40 by 40 piece that he could buy from them. I mean, this is how these people are operating. So it was a clearly illegal operation that they had set up there. The owner, together with lobby group Forum, went to the Soshanguve police to complain. Police put their hands up and they did nothing about it. It had to take them going to a court to get a court order to compel a private company even now to get these people off the land. The police just put their hands up and said it's not their problem. The suggestion is that the police themselves are ideologically compromised on the question of expropriation of land without compensation. What is Cabinet's message there with the police simply refuse to act on plainly unlawful activities? Thank you.
Thanks.
Good day, it's Sipho Sturman from SABC TV News. Just Minister, your take, I mean, with the recession of the economy, and we've also had what you call this constant unemployment that is sitting at 27%, and we've also had the constant petrol price hikes. Of course, we know that the latest round was cushioned, but it still remains high. So there's a sense that all is not going well, and that the working class, and that is about the 9 million that contribute to the tax, that they are under severe pressure. And so what's your message as Cabinet right now? Because with all the pressure we've been talking about now, we have this recession and its implications.
Thanks, Lorenzo.
Minister, it's Lorenzo from ESA, pardon me, it's two questions really. The first one really talks about the appointments. We know that the CEO vacancy has been vacant for about 5, not 6 years. The GCIS, is there any plans on filling that position? And also, I'm quite interested in your take with regards to what's been unfolding at the State Capture Commission. We know that your former colleague in Cabinet has been really accused of going at all lengths to loot. I mean, you've worked with the Minister or former Minister, Frederick. Do you know her as a Thank you.
I can hear you. Do I know?
Doesn't she, do you know her as a thief?
Do I know her as what?
As a thief.
Minister.
Oh.
That question, ma'am, I think they reported to social media police station.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
On one of his service, they said they advertised the mail, they closed it in June, so the process is still within. Okay, thanks. Are those all the questions? All right, over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Barry, for giving us the detail about the Soshanguve police station. And I think I would appreciate where we are, because we didn't reflect on the detail of this kind of an action. That if the law enforcement agencies themselves derelict responsibility as you demonstrate, it would be important that we take appropriate action. If it is reported on time in line with the law, everybody must act. And if there is anything that has to be done, there must be advice rather than just dismissing. It should not have actually happened. Secondly, there is no one, and I think we must restate this. It is not a black and white issue, the issue of land reform. It is about a prosperous, a united South Africa where all of us must benefit in dealing with the inequalities of the past. So whether it is a black landowner or property owner or white, if it is done in an illegal way, it is illegal. So even with this one, if it was a Van der Merwe or a Modise who's been treated this way, it is not acceptable. And I think that's what we must actually deal with, because the intentions are not against the white farmer or the white people. It is about growing the economy, promoting inclusive growth, making sure that we've got food security, we diversify our own agricultural sector, but we also expand ownership so that the majority of South Africans also stand to benefit and own property in line with the rules of the country, not in the manner that you have just shared. And I am definitely sure that if you could pass over the information to Mlimandlela, we'll definitely talk to our colleague, Minister Kale, and see how best we can deal with those kind of issues. You said it's in Soshanguve police station, so we will follow that one up. The issues about the economy, there are factors that are beyond government's control. There are factors that are within government's control. And of course, there are processes that take time to yield the results, the interventions. And we definitely have to then deal with balancing all those matters and see how best we can mitigate these kind of challenges. We know that, as you have indicated, those that are paying taxes, the majority of young people that are unemployed, our own intention is to make sure that no one suffers, including those that are actually contributing towards job creation. That's why we have to look at our own regulatory environment. We need to be looking at our enabling means as government as to whether they are helping to circumvent the challenges that are there. And the bold decision that has been taken around energy is actually a decision that seeks to demonstrate that we are a caring government. And the statement released by Minister Nene yesterday that indicates that, yes, we are facing this challenge, but we are in action, doing things that at an appropriate time, as I'm saying, government together with the private sector and the people of South Africa, through the president of the country, we will be able to say, here is the stimulus package, here are the role players. We will even go to an extent of locating the areas where these interventions are going to be taking place. We are quite concerned, of course, and very protective of the agricultural sector. We are quite concerned and very protective of our own mining sector. And hence those two have also been receiving a lot of leadership and intervention with regard to the strategies and the work that has to actually take place there. I thought what the lady from ENCA was asking me about, Cabinet never reflected on that. Cabinet never reflected on the Judicial Commission, understanding that it is an independent commission. So there's very little that Cabinet can comment on it. On the vacancies at GCIS, we are in a process of dealing with this matter. We are in consultation with the team that is dealing with the review of SOEs. Remember, there was an announcement. There was also an announcement to relook at the organization of the state and see how best, therefore, that on the side of government we revisit the number of departments. It was said we also look at the capacity of the state and we consolidate. As we know that, for example, there has been a process that looks not just on financial interventions with regard to SOEs. So GCIS is also in that particular space. But since I have been deployed into this particular position, we are working on this, and we're quite certain that within a short period of time, the matter would be attended to. The issues raised at the Judicial Commission on state capture are issues that I prefer not to comment about. The former minister is a member of parliament. He's a leader of the African National Congress. Ms. Pumla Williams is the acting director general of the department, and I respect the relationship I have with them.
Thank you very much, Minister. Any pressing question from Cape Town, just on the last round before we close it?
Yes, just the last round, Cape Town. There are two questions left.
Thanks, you can go ahead.
Hi, Minister, thanks, sir. Yeah, just on page 2, on the finalization of the key mining legislation, you did mention the mining charter, thank you, but did Minister Mantashe Gwerit ask Cabinet to consider the withdrawal of the MPRDA legislation that's been languishing in the legislative process for almost 5 years, or if not longer? Was that canvassed among Cabinet? Are you considering withdrawing that piece of legislation? And the second question just relates to the how sustainable or how fair is it, how accurate is it for government to keep on holding up the cushioning of the fuel price on consumers when it's how do I put this? It seems like a very small gesture that cannot be sustained. We are a net importer of crude, and it's just an impossibility. So holding this up now as a way of government, as an example of the good deeds government is doing to sort of cushion and help invigorate the economy, I think is wrong, and it shouldn't be done. Thank you.
Marianne?
Hi, just a quick follow-up with regards to the vacancies in GCIS. Your Acting Director General Pumla Williams is not with you today. Where is she? Thank you.
That's it from Cape Town.
All right. Thank you very much, Lizo. Any other questions, Pretoria? It looks like that's it. Oh, one question at the corner there. You can check, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Manuel Shuma from SABC Radio News. I've got two questions. The first one is with regard to social grants payment. As I speak, there's a post office that has decided to suspend all the payments for social grants because of cable theft. And the response that I'm seeking from the minister is what interventions will you implement in future whereby a post office cannot render a service to social grants beneficiaries? In that particular area, about 200 beneficiaries who were captured by the system last month. They have been told not to visit this service point until Telkom fix the cable, which is going to take another week. The second question, the IFP was in the news yesterday requesting a debate with regard to death penalty. And this matter is not coming up for the first time. It has been coming and going. And it's a concern even from people on the ground who feel the scale of crime in South Africa, especially with about 18 murders in South Africa annually. People feel there isn't enough or sufficient punishment for the criminals. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Minister.
Thank you very much. Minister Mantashe didn't ask Cabinet, and the issue of the MPRDA was not before Cabinet with regard to its withdrawal. On the sustainability of the fuel price increase, you are right. There are external factors that are beyond the control of government, and hence there has to be an appreciation of the dynamics that are around the acquisition of the crude oil, as well as the relationships that then get strained and impact negatively on the price of fuel. And hence, therefore, going forward, government has to look at interventions that are long-term. And previously, the Department of Energy has spoken about those long-term interventions, issues of refineries, issues of dealing with reliable, safe and secure public transport, making sure that beyond the energy sector, we also ensure that South Africans do not get forced to rely on a vehicle as a means for them to go to work, but they must actually work and live in an area that is within reach, so that then you reduce the cost on the poor, because those are the ones who are hardest hit. So it is those interventions that are much more inclusive, that can also ease the burden on the end user, as well as onto the cost of living. The issue of social grants, I'm happy that you have qualified, the gentleman from SABC Radio, that the social grants in that post office have actually been affected by cable theft. So it's not the inefficiency of the post office. We need to condemn these kind of things, and we must appreciate that this is an act of economic sabotage. Now you're depriving the ordinary, very vulnerable and deserving people who are supposed to get services there. And we know that through SASSA and SAPO, there are means that are being put in place to make sure that there will be a movement of those that were actually logged into the system of that particular post office. We urge South Africans to frown upon the issues around selling of stolen goods, and even having people just doing these things without any remorse. Parliament had passed a legislation that actually put these kind of actions as serious offenses that must have serious penalties. We hope that those who have done this will understand that in fact they are hurting the poor and the vulnerable who do not have an option. So the post office, and up until we deal with this kind of actions, there's no guarantee. I don't think that the post office SAPO had planned that there will be a cable theft. So we definitely have to deal with it, but apologize and ensure that those that are affected are not actually being given a raw deal, because it is not out of their own creation. On the death penalty, it was a motion presented in Parliament, and I'm sure Parliament has all the means of reflecting on this issue. We do know that with the high rise of violent crimes in our country, South Africans want to see much more harsher penalties meted against those that commit the crimes. But for now, the issue of a death penalty or not, it is not what government has actually been looking at. It is an issue that has been raised by a political party, and we hope Parliament will then, as the legislators, would then have to reflect on it and take the appropriate actions, informed, of course, by our own conditions and the Constitution of South Africa. Ms. Pumla Williams is off sick.
Thank you very much, colleagues. That closes the briefing.
Minister Nomvula Mokonyane, the Communications Minister, and basically delivering the outcomes of a recent cabinet meeting and importantly, right at the beginning, conveying the message of condolence to South Africans who have died recently, starting with the TUT student Katlego Monareng and the 8 employees at the Denel plant in the Western Cape, and of course, the 3 deaths that took place in downtown Johannesburg as a result of that raging fire. Also importantly, the issue of a stimulus package. You will know that recently the country slipped into a technical recession. The minister there saying that the stimulus package will be presented, to quote her, in a short period of time. And other important issues that came out of that briefing, the issue around GCIS vacancies. You heard her responding just as a last response to one question there, saying that the reason the acting head of GCIS, Phumla Williams, is not with her today is because she is off sick, but also following quickly from that, or ahead of that, was a question around Faith Mutambi being labelled a thief. And she says, well, I will not comment on issues coming out of state capture except to say that I respect the relationships that I have with former Minister Mutambi and the acting head at GCIS, Phumla Williams.